How's it going, everyone? It's time to go over a bunch more Stellar Blade updates and news around the game, coming off the heels of yesterday's video where the CEO of ShiftUp openly talked about the game's lackluster story and why the story fell short of what they originally wanted to do. I know some people push back and say, hey, if you do all of the reading, there is actually a compelling story and world here. However, in terms of the narrative that is at the core of Stellar Blade, I do think that's one of the weaker aspects of the game. Is it outright bad? No. But comparatively to every other area of the game, I do think it's at a lesser level. However, this is one of the areas that they're going to be focusing on in the sequel, and as far as that sequel is concerned, a 2026 to 2027 release window has been thrown around just because of that graphic that ShiftUp had during one of their presentations, and a lot of people took that to mean that Stellar Blade 2 was going to come out in 2027. I had said from the jump, take that window and timeline with a grain of salt, and it looks like at this point, yes, 2027 is probably a little bit too optimistic, especially with game development time these days, you guys, and ShiftUp's other projects that they have in the works. I wouldn't expect this game until a little while after, but I don't think it's going to be that long, so we'll talk about that. We have sales numbers for the game across PlayStation 5 and PC, very exciting stuff there, and to go along with that, we'll go over concurrent player counts on Steam, as it does break a new record, but this will probably be where it settles at. But more on that at the end of this video. Alright, right off the bat, Young Tai Kim did note, first of all, I sincerely thank everyone who has shown love for the PC version. I do believe the criticism about story being weak is valid. The game's core gameplay systems were completed relatively early, but we had held back on cutscenes. That we covered, and that was about the story being weak. But as far as the sequel is concerned, Kim did note they'll be able to offer a deeper narrative, explaining it's true that there were shortcomings in the narrative, and we're cautious about trying to patch that up hastily in Stellar Blade now, as it could conflict with the story that players have already accepted. Continuing on about the potential story DLC and the game targeting a 2027 release, Kim did push back on the 2027 window. Did we officially announce that? That must have been a mistake by our IR team. Yes, it's true. While preparing the DLC, the scope grew larger than expected, so we shifted our focus toward developing it as a full sequel. However, a lot has changed since then. Because all of our resources were focused on this PC version, I can't say that much progress has been made on the sequel yet. Right now, we're in the phase of deep R&D, asking ourselves, how can we present a vision for the next generation? So this is probably going to be a PlayStation 6 title, you guys, maybe a cross-gen title, and credit to them that they focused on the PC version. They were putting resources towards that PC version. The PC version of Stellar Blade is legitimately one of the best PC versions of a video game that has been released in literally the last decade, maybe of all time, and given that it has been an era of an abundance of atrocious PC versions, whether it be Spider-Man 2, whether it be Last of Us Part 1, whether it be Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Monster Hunter Wilds, Dragon's Dogma 2, I can go on and on. There have just been bad PC port after bad PC port, but look what happens when you put some resources to your PC version, you treat it with care, you end up with a game like Stellar Blade. Now, to be fair, Stellar Blade is a UE4 game, and that probably did alleviate a lot of the issues, but the game still is gorgeous, and it runs amazingly well. Kim continued, to be honest, we've only just wrapped up the PC release following the PlayStation version, so now is when we can finally start proper R&D. Releasing it in 2027 would be fantastic, but with only 3 years left, all I can say is that we'll try our best. What I can promise, though, is that it'll be a great game. I think the 2027 idea, you should eliminate that right now. A game being in R&D right now and then expected to release within 2 years from now, I'm sorry, you guys, that probably just won't happen. Even if they do have some of the foundational ideas in place with the work on the DLC that they were doing, a 2-year turnaround time as far as a game still being very early on in development, that is just unheard of in today's gaming climate. Again, you look at some of the big Sony releases, and maybe Stellar Blade isn't at the scale of a God of War, isn't at the scale of a Naughty Dog project, whatever. You're talking Naughty Dog 7 years of turnaround between games. You're talking, the Santa Monica's, the Guerrilla Games, 5 years of development time. If Stellar Blade came out by 2028, I would still say that's a slam dunk because that's 4 years after the release of the initial Stellar Blade. And remember, Shift Up did the PC version in-house. They didn't hand it off to a Nix's software that a lot of the Sony studios do, where those PC ports are not handled by a Naughty Dog in-house. Nix's handled Last of Us Part 2, the PC version of that, and Nix's handled a lot of these other PC versions, I believe Horizon Forbidden West as well. And given the amount of care that they put into the Stellar Blade PC version, that was probably a significant amount of time that they did put into that. So again, that 2027 window is going to be way too quick. That would only be a 3-year turnaround from the initial release anyway. I would expect 2028 and even 2029 wouldn't be that crazy. 2029 would be 5 years in between games, which would be in line with all of the other major developers and how quickly they put out games. 2028, I would say, is a huge W. If you can lower that 5 years to 4 years, that's significant, and I would say that's a huge W. That's one of the major unfortunate realities in gaming in general these days, is that significant turnaround time between games. Like, we're talking about CDPR putting out a new Witcher trilogy that's kicking off with The Witcher 4. Guys, there is a good chance we are going to be dead and buried before that trilogy wraps up. I hate to be a little bit morbid, but that's just the dev cycles of these games, that Witcher 4 is going to come out in 2029, and then Witcher 5 is going to come out in 2036, and then Witcher 6 is going to come out in 2043. Like, that is the reality of game development these days. So if we're talking about, oh my god, we're kicking off a new trilogy, like, it's like, all right, let's hope I make it to the end of that trilogy. But nonetheless, again, so I would look at that 2028 window potentially as a big W. And if they somehow miraculously make it out in 2027, that's a gigantic W. I cannot even explain how big of a W that is. However, with that being said, it looks like story DLC is off the table, as that was in the works. Scope grew larger and larger, and then they spun that into a sequel. So, you know, if you were waiting for story DLC, that's a bit of a bummer. I still think there's potential to do more crossover DLCs, adding maybe like a section, not a large section, an hour or two of gameplay along with a crossover section that's thematically in line with whatever crossover partner you're working with. I think that makes a lot of sense, and it's an opportunity to make a lot of money, but we'll see if they ultimately do that. Moving on from that, it has been confirmed that Stellar Blade has sold over 3 million copies worldwide across PlayStation 5 and PC. Keep in mind that this is copies sold, this is not players. This is 3 million copies sold, and the PC version alone has sold over 1 million units in just 3 days, a gigantic success, a new record for a Korean single-player console game, and for a new IP. The game has just been an outstanding success. Now, a lot of the PC sales are coming from China. There's a Chinese dub that wasn't available on console, and regional pricing is available there. It's $38 versus $60, but it's still sales of the game, and while it is a large portion of the sales, there's a lot of people in other regions still buying the game. And I think some people are trying to downplay the game's success because, oh, there's so many sales of this game in China, as if those aren't real sales or something like that. And even if you eliminated all of the sales in China, the game would still be a gigantic success. It would still be the peak concurrent player count for a PlayStation release on PC if you took out like 60% of the players. So, like, people gotta stop their cope as far as Stellar Blade's success. I get it, it's a small minority of people, and most people are ecstatic about this game's success, and beyond the aesthetics and the attractiveness of the main character, there is fundamentally a well-made game here, and that should be given credit to. Sure, having a good-looking main character helps. Whoa, dude, a single-player character-driven action game, it matters how the character looks. My mind is blown. You couldn't make it a morbidly obese land whale like me and people would buy it in droves. Whoa, dude, how about breaking new ground here? But, yeah, beyond that, it's also a great game, and I'm just happy to see it be successful. Talk about the game's incredible soundtrack. Talk about the game's stylish action gameplay, the great PC version, and the great performance that the game has in comparison to so many other PC games that look worse than this game and run even worse. And look at how Stellar Blade is performing, running great on the deck as well. And these level of sales are fantastic for a brand new IP. Now you could say, well, Square Enix said that Final Fantasy 16 didn't meet their expectations and it sold 3 million copies. Well, two things. Stellar Blade is not Final Fantasy as an IP. It doesn't have a 30-year history attached to it. And, you know, Square Enix can have whatever expectations they want out of their games, but expecting Final Fantasy 16 to sell, you know, 10 million copies or whatever in a couple of weeks, I just don't know what you're thinking. And that's not what Square Enix said. I'm saying if 3 million wasn't successful to them, well, I don't know what their expectations are, but maybe get your expectations in check. And Stellar Blade, even though it does have a significant budget attached to it, it's not Final Fantasy 16 in terms of scale and budget attached to that game. Also, one final thing to note, in line with the sales, the game did hit a new peak concurrent player count number yesterday of 192,000 concurrent players. I did see that they were hoping to crack 200,000 concurrent players, but you guys, 192,000 is incredibly successful, and it would be making it by far, not even close, the biggest PlayStation single-player game release on PC ever. One of those games that had a delayed release, and it has just done outstandingly well, and should bode well for the future of the IP. And given how many people are playing it on PC now, I mean, man, you are working with such a significant pool of people now that you could sell future DLC to, that I just feel like if you want to make a lot of money, that would be a pretty good way to do so. But we'll see if that comes to fruition. But I digress. That is gonna do it for me. Stellar Blade 2, I would not expect that in 2027. And at this point, story DLC seems to be put to the side as they work on the sequel and ship that to the sequel. I would like to see more crossover content, and I think there's a lot of potential to do crossovers with games like Helldivers 2, with games like a Horizon, with games like a God of War. I think that's a license to print money. And obviously, one of the more notable ones, Final Fantasy VII. I mean, could you imagine the Tifa costume? Printing money right there as far as that's concerned. And 3 million copies sold worldwide across PlayStation 5 and PC. Already 1 million copies sold on PC in just 3 days. That's going to do it for me. Let me know all of your thoughts in the comment section down below. As always, sound off there. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, do us a favor and hit the bell icon. This way you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. That's the best way to keep up with all of our uploads, and we usually try to upload 2 videos a day. And with the bell icon hit, you'll be notified whenever we do upload a video. As always, thanks for watching.